Don't tell me about being passionate about computers. Eli, I want to do this job because I'm passionate. But you really? You might be messed up in the head. Just don't be passionate about this. Anyways, Raleigh is absolutely awesome. So probably in the beginning of the new year, we're going to be having classes there, and we're going to see how that goes. So if you can go there, become a member of that. Again, with these in-person ones, please only become a member or sign up if you can actually show up. Again, God bless you. If you're in Mogadishu, take all these online classes that you want to because you're in Mogadishu. If you're in Mogadishu, you're probably not getting to Raleigh, so don't sign up for a Raleigh class. You would think that would be common sense, but anyways. Anything else? Yeah, DonorBox. Again, these are all free to the end user classes. That doesn't actually mean free. I do get supported basically off of the crowdfunding. We use DonorBox as our crowdfunding mechanism. There should be links. I'm trying to put more links around for DonorBox. Never said I was great at business. Just because you understand something doesn't mean you're good at it. I understand business. I just forget to put links to actually ask you for money. Anyways, if you see a DonorBox link, DonorBlackBox/ETCG, you can throw some money in. That would ever be so lovely. And then finally, if you have questions, more than happy to answer questions as we go through. Just make sure you raise your hand actually in Zoom, because if you do this, I cannot see you. And again, it is hilarious how many people still do this. Every single class, I say, don't do this. And then I see this. And then I giggle. It makes me happy on the inside. Anyways, there we go. Would you ever do a class in Charlotte? Would anybody ever DonorBox me a chunk of money to do a class in Charlotte? That's a better question there. That is one thing, again, like thinking about like how I spread this out. We may do some things in Charlotte. Again, I did not want to leave the Asheville area. I do like Asheville. Again, I'm a snarky asshole, to be clear. But it's just me. I do love Asheville. Mountains, water, people, all that kind of stuff is nice. So I didn't really want to commute. To be honest with you, to be completely honest with you, I don't want to have to do classes in Raleigh. No part of me wants to do classes in Raleigh, though it's a lovely place. It's just now that we had our biblical flood, which just devastated this place. Again, our disaster has not yet started. The disaster here is probably going to start in January or February when the economic crap show really just starts rolling over this area. And so that's why expanding out to doing something like Raleigh, I'm now more willing to do. Right? There are things you're willing to do before a biblical flood and things you're willing to do after a biblical flood. So anyways, that's why I'm looking at Raleigh. I would be interested in doing Charlotte. Charlotte's only 2 hours away versus being 4 hours away, but that's its own area. And again, there's workflows involved. So I've started to create the connections in Raleigh so that I have connections. The next thing is to actually get room there somewhere. The next thing is, right, that's the thing. Like in business, everybody thinks the idea is important. The idea is worth $1 billion. Man, I crap out more ideas before I have a cup of coffee in the morning, right? The actual, what's valuable is actually being able to implement it, to put it into action. And so that's the thing, is like if you ask me, am I willing to do it in Charlotte? Absolutely. If you ask me, do I currently have the bandwidth to figure out how to do it in Charlotte? Absolutely not. So maybe Charlotte will happen. We'll see. I do gotta say, there's a DonorBox link. DonorBox link. I listen to zeros. Anywho, it's just reality. Where the hell is my stuff? Okay, so yeah. Let's start talking about this. So today's class is not about all this other crap. It is about HTML5 API. So these are absolutely awesome. And I feel like this is one of those things that kind of got lost in time. Again, one of the weird things in technology is there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that's out there in the technology world that everybody kind of forgets about for some reason. It's like it's there. It's there. It's stable. It's free to use. And nobody cares. Why? Who the hell knows? I think the HTML5 APIs are really interesting, again, especially if you go back to Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs, when the iPhone originally came out, back, 2008, Originally, in the first 6 months, the original idea was that there were not going to be third-party developers. The idea was Apple was going to create all the apps on the iPhone, and then any app that you wanted to use basically would be software as a service. You would simply go to the website and you would use the web app. Somebody, within the first 6 months, realized, if we had our own app developer program, we could charge these folks 30% or whatever to put the stuff onto the store, and so then they came up with the app program. But the interesting thing is that actually there is a technology and there's a whole infrastructure that was developed so that you do not need to build native apps, let's just say for many, many, many things, right? The idea being is that your web browser has these HTML5 APIs, has these HTML5 standards already built into it, and so as long as the web browser is HTML5 compliant, that you can actually interact with a lot of the local resources simply through your web app and using the programming language JavaScript. Again, we've talked about this before. People ask, Eli, what is the language that I need to learn in order to be successful? And as I keep showing you, we're just adding up all the different languages that you need. Basically, JavaScript works really well with what's called HTML5 in order to provide you a lot of functionality. So before HTML5, there was something called HTML4, and back in the HTML4 days, you had HTML, which is hypertext markup language, basically gives you the framework for your app. You had CSS, which gives you the pretty colors and that kind of thing, and JavaScript kind of gave you the interactivity. In HTML4, there was very much were kind of separate things. Again, we were all still trying to figure out what the hell it is we were trying to do. HTML4 is kind of like the metaphor for Silicon Dojo right now. We kind of sort of know where we're going. We kind of sort of know what we want. And we're just kind of super gluing crap together to see how to get there. So HTML5 is hopefully the metaphor for where we'll be in a year or so, is where they actually figured out where they wanted to go with the HTML standard and all that kind of stuff. And so basically all of these different products got essentially super glued together. So HTML and CSS and JavaScript are now much more tightly integrated into this HTML5 development environment than they were before. You may have heard of this with things like HTML5 video, right? So if you go back to HTML4, HTML4 did not support video at all. You had to use something called Flash Media Player. Again, back from the Jobs days, you may have heard of Flash. That was... Again, that was the best of god-awful solutions, but it worked, sort of. But basically with HTML5, they came out with this video standard, so you can actually play video directly within the web browser. You don't need those third-party components to actually be able to do that. And so that's kind of cool stuff that you get with HTML5 that you did not have with HTML4. For a lot of folks out there, none of this matters. History lesson. The big thing to remember with HTML5, especially once we start talking about these HTML5 APIs though, is the whole compatibility issue. So, let me just pull this up for a second. HTML5 API. Should have already had this pulled up before, but come on. There we go. So if we want to look at the, I guess you could call it web APIs, so this is Mozilla. Mozilla has a listing of a lot of the web APIs out there. And so one of the big things is if you decide to use one of these APIs, you do need to look at the compatibility. Again, one of the most important things with your job as a technology professional is talking to people. Talking to end users, talking to the people that are part of the project or whatever to find out what they're using, how they're using it, the whole nine yards. And one of the reasons is because of things like compatibility issues. So like here, I don't know, clipboard API. I don't know. So they got a clipboard API so you can connect to the local clipboard. And one of the big things is if you scroll down with all of these, they're going to show you browser compatibility. And so what it'll say for clipboard is across all the browsers, the basic clipboard thing works. Formats unsanitized, whatever the hell that means. You can see it doesn't work in Firefox or Safari or Firefox on Android or Safari on iOS. And so that's going to be one of the things that you need to be thinking about if you start using these HTML5 APIs is basically what browser, what operating system do you expect your users to be using, and then is it compatible, right? And this whole compatibility issue, it literally comes down to whatever the hell Tim Cook is thinking, right? Tim Cook decides we will support it, or Tim Cook decides they won't support it. And that's just it. There's no arguing around this particular issue. So that is one thing to keep in mind with these APIs. So basically with the APIs, they allow you to access local resources through the web browser. Security and compatibilities are determined by the web browser used. So one, the compatibility, as I was just talking about, does it support it all? I don't know. Go take a look at the chart. That's really what you do. And again, I really want, again, for any 18-year-olds out there that are watching these videos, I know I sound snarky when I say this, but this really is a huge part of our job. A huge part of our job is reading through licensing agreements, looking through compatibility charts and the whole 9 yards, and figuring out what the hell is going on. I think about that with Azure, was it voice services? So I like Azure Cognitive Services. Microsoft has Azure. Azure is their cloud platform. One of the things they have is cognitive services, AI-like services, and one of the things they had is voice. What was really interesting with compatibility issues is I got voice working in like 15 minutes, right? They have this Python thing, you figure it out, you get it going. And so I had that going on my production computer. And then what I wanted to do is I wanted to have that running on my Raspberry Pi. And that's where you get into compatibility issues. So I got confused. Well, I didn't get confused. It was confusing. So basically, Azure Voice Services work on Linux, and Azure Voice Services work on Raspberry Pi. But it's like they work with Python with Linux, and so you're like, okay, it works on Linux and it works on ARM, so it should be fine. But it's like if you're just using a normal Intel box, you can just use Python to interact with it. But if you're going to use Linux on a Raspberry Pi, you need to use C#. And that's just how it is. They just came up with compatibility horse crap. And so you sit there, like you're literally, you have the code. You have the code. You know the code works, but it's not working. And the reason is because of the damn compatibility charts. The other thing they're going to run into is security issues. So especially if you have a smartphone. Tim Cook wants you to be secure. So one of the weird things is, again, doing a lot of stuff that we're going to be doing today is iOS or Safari on the iPhone. It actually has more securities than some of the other web browsers out there, so you may run into quirks with this. And again, this might be an issue for your users, especially if you have low skill users, where if you click to do something and for some reason in their security settings they have set it to not do that thing. Don't do location services, don't allow microphone use, don't allow camera use or whatever else. If those are set in the security, then when your app runs, it's not going to be able to get those resources, and then you just made your help desk people's life miserable. So again, that's going to be one of the things to be thinking about too, is with all of this, where do you go? And again, what's the right answer? No right answer. Just things to be thinking about. The other thing too is some of the APIs for some reason require SSL. Again, surprise, surprise, when you are using iOS devices. So this is secure socket layer, so you will have heard of HTTPS. So normally you go to a website and you go to HTTP, that is unsecured, that is unencrypted. Anybody can see what you're looking at on CNN.com. HTTPS, we're using SSL, that encrypts your traffic so nobody knows, that you're looking at Trump today, or whatever else. All right, so some of these APIs, for whatever reason, especially on iOS devices, require SSL. Why? I honestly don't know. So I'll talk about the setup in a minute. If you want to be messing around with things, so the stack that I'm going to be using today, in order to demo this stuff, is we're using DigitalOcean. FTC compliance, they pay me no money. If they want to pay me money, I will take their money. More than happy to take their money, but they don't give it to me. Anyway, so we're using DigitalOcean. Basically, I got a $6 droplet on DigitalOcean. What I will tell you with DigitalOcean is they have $4 a month droplets. Don't do it. Don't do it. I don't know what the hell that's for. It exists. You can get it up and running. It is crap. But you also don't need a $30 a month droplet. For whatever reason, I found $6 a month droplets are just fine. You go with the the lowest tier, the lowest tier processor charges you $6. You're done. So I do that. We got Ubuntu running on it. On that, I simply have Apache 2. So everything that I'm going to be showing you today this is just what's called a LAMP server. Another word. Linux, Apache. Well, it doesn't actually have those. But Linux Apache. Basically, it's just a web server. You can set this up at home. The big thing, though, is, again, we need that SSL. And so setting up SSL certificates can be expensive and can be a pain in the ass. You may have heard of something called Let's Encrypt. And if you know how to use Let's Encrypt, always use Let's Encrypt. That is an awesome product. It's open source, free to use, got a rotation scheme. I don't see anything bad with it, but it's its own deal. What I decided to do is, to make my life easier, is just do DigitalOcean. So if you get domain names through DigitalOcean, the SSL is actually just set up through your DNS resolution. So when people go, it does the whole encryption deal for you, and you don't have to set anything else up. You don't have to pay an additional $70 a year fee for an SSL certificate. You don't have to do anything else. You just get your SSL directly through CloudFlare. So that's what we have going on. But again, that's going to be one of the weird things, weird quirks you can run into with HTML5 is if you're not running this crap on SSL or SSH, or not SSL, I'm sorry, SSL, you can run into weird issues. Cool. Okay, so let's go down and start looking at these. So we're going to look at a camera, we're going to look at a geolocation, we're going to look at a keyboard, we're going to look at an accelerometer, we're going to look at a gamepad, we're going to do speech recognition on device, on browser speech recognition, and we're going to do speech synthesizer on device. This is kind of like, I found like seven examples to kind of give you an idea of how this works, and as with all this stuff, there's like 100 different things that you can actually do. Go do some research afterwards if you're interested in it. Okay, so the first one is going to be the camera, right? So there's something called the Media Devices API, which allows you access to the camera for still pictures and for video, right? So let's say you wanted to create like an Instagram clone just as a web app, and you want access to the camera. Basically what you can do is with this, you can use JavaScript so you get access to the camera, and then you can auto-upload the image up to your web server and process it however you want going forward. And that's basically what we're going to be doing. With the camera, it was a little quirky. I have no doubt I could get it working properly on my iOS device. I also had other things to do today. So for whatever reason, just so you know, as I go through, because I'll be using like different browsers and I'll be using different devices today, and you're like, oh, why is Eli doing this? Because it wasn't worth the troubleshooting. Because I could get it to work on Chrome, so we're going to be using Chrome. Anyway, so the camera, let's go over and take a look at this. If we take a look at the script, no, that's right there. Yeah. So this is the script. So this is going to be one thing too. Once you understand how HTML5 APIs work, one of the things I will recommend is this is where you can use ChatGPT. So if you have ChatGPT, you can literally go to ChatGPT and you can say, I want to use JavaScript to create a little script to grab blah out of camera. And once you kind of understand how this works, it will just spit out results for you, and you can basically just use those. Again, as long as you're not dealing with personally identifiable information, some other stuff, you should be fine with that. Now, honestly, with the examples today, that's what I did with ChatGPT. Again, it is not intelligent, but it is still useful. So basically all this is, so we had the intro to JavaScript class before, and I'll kind of scroll through this a little bit because there's a lot of, I don't get lost in the weeds with this, because there's a lot of stuff here. But anyways, let's see. Can you see that? You should be able to see that. Okay, so basically we're going to do H1, take a picture. So this is going to be the title of the page. We're going to have a button. On-click equals start camera function, right? So HTML button, and then in this we have the function, and we're basically saying on-click of the button, we want to do the start camera function, and the start camera function is down here. And that is going to say enable camera. So that's going to be a lot of things, like with iOS, for whatever reason, you almost always want like an enable the service before you actually use it. I guess it's a weird security thing with iOS. So if basically, anyways, just try to put an enable thing. When you do go to ChatGPT, say have an enable button for iOS, and it'll give you an enable button. Button ID capture button, so on click capture photo, disabled. So this is a button that's going to be disabled by default. Basically, once the start camera button has been clicked, you'll be able to click this to actually be able to capture a photo. We're going to have a video element here. So this is actually going to give me a live view. Jock's just coming and going. Jock's like, I'm here, then I'm gone, then I'm here, then I'm gone. Anyways, so this is going to give you a video view. So basically you're going to get a live view of what you're looking at, and then you click the picture, and that gives you a nice little mug. I'll show you to that in a second. We're going to have a canvas. So in the JavaScript world, when you're drawing, and again, when you think about drawing, basically putting an image on the screen, so it's going to be dynamically putting that image on the screen. You do that with something called canvases. So we're going to have a canvas tag, the ID for it's going to be canvas, with a 300, height of 300, and that's it. And then we come down here to our JavaScript, right? So we're going to open the script and close it at the end. We create a constant for video, so document.getElementById video, canvas, we're going to get the ID by canvas, context. For canvas, when you're drawing a canvas, you basically tell it the dimensions essentially, so you're saying it's a 2D. Capture button, we're going to get the element by ID for the capture button, and then we're going to have let stream, so we're going to have a variable for stream. Hold on. David, what's up?
So since this is HTML5 and it's a standard, will this will also work on Android? Will it also work on a computer too? And if you have access to the camera there?
Yeah. So, like with this example, I'm going to be using a computer because I didn't have to do any troubleshooting on the computer. Yeah, so HTML5 standard, this should work, on any HTML web browser, which in 2024, they all should be HTML5. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, see, that's the nice thing about it. Again, this is again, with all the technology world, it's a standard. Yeah. It's supposed to be a standard, so it should work across all of them. But again, exactly how they do, that's what essentially you get paid for. Oh, Jock, what's up?
So I know before you mentioned that Steve Jobs made something a little different. Well, could we use this? Because I know to program for an iPhone, their camera works differently. Can we use this to kind of like use it to write for an iPhone camera? Or would this work for an iPhone camera? Or we just have to do it in that native language to try to work for an iPhone camera?
Yeah, so basically what this is an API, right? And so again, as I say, AI is hard, APIs are not. So essentially you have your device down here, right? So you got your whatever, iOS, Windows, blah, blah, and it has a camera on it. So essentially what's happening is there's a whole bunch of really complicated code that allows this hardware to be able to talk to this camera and get something of utility. What the API does is you don't see any of that. That's a black box. You just simply get a little door, and as long as you communicate to it properly, it will give you a response back that you should be able to use. So again, when we talk about APIs, APIs are Twilio, APIs are OpenAI, API Cisco. Network hardware in the modern world actually has APIs, and HTML5 has an API. And so basically, iOS is doing something really complicated to get the data out of the camera. All you're worried about is this little API connection right here. And so again, like I say, that should work for any browser because Windows is going to do all of this its own way, Linux will do its own way, Android will do its own way. But all that matters is the data that comes in and the data that gets sent out. As long as that is standardized, the rest of this doesn't matter. And again, that's what we talk about with service-oriented architecture is so important, is you just simply design for the API and you're not worried about that mess.
Oh, okay, thank you. This makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Cool. So we're going to have a stream. The stream's going to show us the video. Again, a lot of this, if you don't fully understand it, don't worry. I mean, it's like, again, JavaScript is not my favorite language. I have to say, I will admit it. We all got to admit to our biases. I don't like JavaScript. I just don't like it. Anyway, I'll explain it to you. I'll try to explain it to you. We'll do more classes with it. Anyway, so we're going to have this function for start camera, and basically what this is going to be doing is going to be trying to start the camera to see if it actually can start the camera. Is the camera available? Is there some kind of firewall that's blocking it? Whatever else. So Navigator media devices, this is the actual API that's being used. Get user media from the video. Stream will equal media stream. We're going to get the thing on load. Blah, blah, blah. Basically, we're having this. So console log, basically, it'll say camera stream started successfully if all this works properly. Catch error. So this is kind of like try except in the Python world. If there's an error, error accessing camera, error could not be accessed. So basically what happens is when you click on the enable button, this start camera function will fire off, and hopefully that works. Once that's fired off, we then have the capture photo here. So if there is no stream coming through, so if there's no video thing, say camera is not enabled, please click on enable camera first. If not, then context dot draw image video 00 canvas width canvas height. So basically it's going to be drawing a picture of what's coming in through the video feed, and then we end the script. If we go and we want to take a look at what this looks like, we come to here. Okay, so this is my little app. So that script is up on DigitalOcean. So this is up on DigitalOcean. Again, if you're on Zoom, you can't see it, but I'm at https://crappy-app.com camera.html. So you can go to this, crappy-app.com/camera.html, and this should work for you. The nice part about this, is we start talking about architecture, is that this is all being run locally for me, right? So basically, the web server sends me text. That text is HTML and JavaScript. My web browser then basically turns that into this app. And so there's literally no resource load going on back on my server once this comes in. So take a picture. I click on enable camera. So this is going to ask me allow or never for this website. And again, this is going to be the problem you're going to run into with like troubleshooting. Again, especially if you're in a business environment, you get a whole bunch of people clicking, oh no, never, that's a security problem. And then your app doesn't work. Anyways, we say allow. Once we've allowed, so I get a little, there we go. So I get a little green button to show me that it's there. And now look, see, I don't know, can you see it anymore? You see, so this is a nice little live video feed. So basically this image is going into my computer, the API is pulling it, and then I'm getting this image right here. And then this is what you get like if you go to like a passport photo thing, or if you go to any app where you have to take a picture, I can then go here to capture picture. I click on that. And now I actually have an image file, right? So this grabbed a still image out of this particular video feed. Capture, right? You kind of get the point. And so if you add a couple more levels to this, basically I could grab this image, I could say, is this image okay? If I clicked okay, I could then have this send the actual image file up to our server, up on DigitalOcean, and then that could get dumped into our system and you could do whatever else, right? So this is basically how you can use JavaScript. So just HTML and JavaScript to allow you to get access to your camera. That's all there is to that particular one. Let's see here. Refresh. And there's camera. And then there's geolocation. So this is a good one. Basically what this allows you to do is it allows you to get the geolocation based off of the onboard GPS. So basically if you're creating like an Uber clone, whatever, you need the very specific location. So I've shown you how to do location services in the past, and based off of your IP address, you can basically query a database and it'll tell you sort of where you're at. You are in Asheville, this zip code and a couple of other things. So, you can figure out what county I'm in. But what happens if I need to know really pretty specifically where you're at? That is where this geolocation, the navigation API comes in. So we go over and take a look at this. Oops, where are we going? Navigation. So again, a lot of code here. But H1, so geolocation example, button on click, get location, so get my location. Function get location, and so basically all of this is where it's going to be getting the location. If navigator can get the geolocation, it's going to get the current position. Inner text is going to be locating. Then we're going to go down to show position, and this is basically where it's going to print out, get element ID, location, inner text equals latitude, and then what the latitude is, and longitude equals the longitude. Function show error, so if there's any number of errors here, user denied the request for geolocation, location information is unavailable, the request for user location timed out, or an unknown error. These are a whole bunch of error codes. So really, if you take a look at this, it's, this right here is most of the code, and then we just have a show error thing down here. If we go and we actually do this one, let's see if this works properly. Let me do this. Hold on one second. That's Gamepad, voice synthesizer, keyboard. Okay, so let me see if this works here. I think with the geolocation. Okay. So I had it working here. So this is going to say request permission for geolocation. I'm going to click on that. Is that going to work? Okay. Permission granted. Click my location to get coordinates. And this is going to be what it thinks its current coordinates are. So based off the computer, and again, the computer and web browser is collecting information about you. So this is where it thinks I'm at, 35.59 latitude, negative 82.56 longitude. If I try this on the iPhone, so basically, again, this is all live, so you can play around with it too. So I do request permission. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, thank God. So I said request permission, and now it's giving me this, right? I say allow while using app. Then it'll say would like to use your location, so I say allow. I say get my location, blah blah. And so again, this is slightly different, 35 point whatever, right? And so again, I know you're probably looking at this and you're like, woo, woo. The important thing to understand, right, is all that GPS stuff, that stuff is incredibly complicated. Once I can turn that into ASCII, once I can turn that into text, that's where we can do a lot of cool things, right? So basically, my JavaScript is pulling this off of the actual GPS unit that is on this thing. So this thing is actually it's getting the signals from the satellite. It theoretically knows exactly where it's at. So I could have part of the script to then send that information back to my server, and then based off of whatever the hell it is that I'm trying to accomplish, something else could, fire off next. So again, if I was doing a competitor to Uber, I could have them go through the process. Basically, when they're going through the process, it finds where their geolocation is. I say submit for ride. It would then send my GPS location to the server. The server would then know all the GPS locations for all the drivers. It would simply match whoever's closest to me, and then it would route them to me. And that's kind of cool stuff you get out of your little navigation thing. And again, the nice part about this is it's however accurate a normal GPS thing is. So that's geolocation. If we go down, get keyboard. So this is one thing I was kind of showing you with the JavaScript class last week, I guess, last week, is there's a keyboard event API. So you can actually be reading from the keyboard and then trigger events to happen based off of certain keys that are pressed. So if you used to play a lot of online games, so JavaScript used for creating video games online, versions of Space Invaders or whatever else, and so a lot of that is basically just using the keyboard, and so with the keyboard event API, you can use that in order to trigger things to happen on the screen. If we go, if I can find we go to the keyboard, this is actually very simple. This is incredibly simple. So we have H1 up here. Press R or B to change the background color. Key display, so press a key to see it displayed here. So if I press a key, that'll be displayed there. If I press R or B, it'll actually trigger something. So for document, add event listener to key down, and then for event, the key is basically get whatever key is being pushed down, and then document, get element by ID, key display, enter text, you pressed whatever the key is, and this is simply a method to put it into uppercase. If key equals R, basically we're going to change the background color to red. Else if key equal B, we're going to change the background color to blue. That is incredibly simple. Again, make it as complicated as you want. If we go over and take a look for keyboard, where's my keyboard? That's a voice synthesizer. Keyboard. So this is the keyboard, right? That's all this is. Oops. We'll do a refresh. So press R or B to change background color. If I press K, you press K. If I press spacebar, you press nothing. M, N, B. Well, I did B then. So I do B, and the background color changes to blue. If I put on red, the background color changes to red. If I do J, nothing happens. A, tab, whatever else. And so this is a way that you can capture whatever people are plugging in the keyboard and then have that do something with this particular screen. Again, this can trigger an event to happen on your server if you do some additional coding to make that kind of thing work. Let's see here. So that's the keyboard. Any questions from anybody? Nope. Okay. Then we get to the accelerometer. So there's another example. So there's something called the Device Motion Event API, and it gives you access to the user's accelerometer. So the accelerometer is the little sensor in this device that's supposed to detect the X, the Y, and the Z axis. Anyways, so the axis. Basically tries to determine what the orientation of the device is. It can also act as a sensor for things like shaking. That's basically the example that I'm going to be using now. If we go over and take a look at the code for the accelerometer, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing code. So if I shake my phone, so this does work on the phone, so if I shake my phone, it'll know I'm shaking it. It's all pretty simple. Shake detection, button on click, request access for shake detection, status, shake your device to trigger. So basically it'll say this, when I shake it, it'll say I'm being shaken. Shake the baby, don't shake the baby, do shake the phone. If we go down here, again, it's just a lot of just kind of generic code. Let shake threshold equal 15. So this is basically how much it has to be, how much the X, Y, Z axis has to move before it gets detected. Let last X equals null. So whatever the previous X was, previous Y, previous Z. So let is how we create a variable in the JavaScript world. So again, so we don't do that in Python. You do that in JavaScript. So let is just how you do it. So let, and we're going to equal null, so that basically has no value to it. And again, do remember in JavaScript you have to end everything with a semicolon. Request access. So this is basically how we're going to request access to see if we're actually able to use this piece of functionality. And then we have the start shake detection function down here. We're going to add a listener for device motion. Basically, we're going to have an acceleration event. Let x equal acceleration.x or 0. So basically, if there is a value for this, it'll set the value for x. If not, if it's something weird, it'll just set it to 0. The same for y, the same for z. So all we're doing is shaking, so we don't really care where it gets shaken, as long as it gets shaken. Let's see here. If last x does not equal null, and last y does not equal null, and last z does not equal null, this is delta, so this is getting the absolute value. So we're using math function with absolute value. Basically, what is the current value of x subtracted from the last value of x, and what is the distance between those 2 points? That's all you're looking for there. If the delta x is greater than the shake threshold, or delta y is greater than the shake threshold, or delta z is greater than the shake threshold, you're going to get the status, and you're going to change the text to shake detected. We're going to set a timeout, so basically it pauses for about a second, So it's not constantly looping. That's one thing, again, when you're doing these scripts, especially when people are interacting with it, many times you still have to put a little bit of a pause in there so you don't start getting some really weird errors. And that's all we're doing there. And then last x equals whatever current x is, last y equals whatever current y is, last z equals whatever current z is, and essentially this just continues to loop around. So if I pull this up on my phone, shake detection. All right. So I have my little shake detection app. I have my little shake detection. Show both of you. Show both of my students. Right? Okay. Then what I do is I do enable shake detection. Enable shake detection. All right. So it says shake your device to trigger. Let's see if it works. Ooh. Shaking. Ooh. There we go. See? Yeah, I don't. I know, it's tremendously exciting. But I mean, that's, you know, you could create like a little game or something. Like if something pops up on the screen, will you shake in time? Or again, like you get like a lot of the Tinder things, swipe left, swipe right. Maybe you could have something for your web app where if you don't like something, you shake it and it goes in the garbage can. Again, I don't know. The important thing is I'm just kind of showing you that the accelerometer is accessible for you from the device. Dun, dun, dun. Oh yeah, I feel like that. Remember with Jock, right? For every one question anybody else asks, Jock gets 5. I think we should just have that limit. It's a very, 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 right? Other people should ask questions too. If other people have questions, it's good that Jock is asking questions, but other people should do it too. What's up, Jock?
Okay, this is my number 2. So, that's just like when we put these apps together, it depends on how sensitive our device is. So like you're using an iPhone,
Yep.
and you like someone else might be using an Android. So we have to determine how sensitive it is. So say for instance, I want to put together a Parkinson's app, and I want to study tremors, and I put this into play.
Yep.
If it is supposed to detect if someone's having a tremor. Is there any way I can adjust the sensitivity using the code to detect if they have a small tremor or a big tremor, and it would show a detection?
Well, yeah, you can detect the sensitivity to a degree. Like even with this, like the shake threshold is 15, so you could futz around with it. So that's basically how far from last value to new value, right? So you could adjust that kind of thing. Within the Accelerometer API itself, I'm not sure how much you can really adjust it. Again, that would be Google search and ChatGPT search. The big thing is though, again, if you're going to be having people use a lot of different devices, yeah, that's going to be one of the big things with user testing. Because that's, you know, if somebody buys a $100 Android phone, another person buys an $1,100 iPhone, right? The iPhone may be too expensive, but it's still like a $700 phone. So that's going to be one of the things that you have to look at, like with what your users are using. If they're using some $50 pieces of crap, you know, these kind of sensors might not be very good for them.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Yep. Yeah, and again, that's where it's going to be user testing, user testing, user testing, user testing, user testing, user testing, user testing. And again, you'll notice with so many of these classes, you know, one of the big things that I tell you folks is you've got to be talking to people. You have to constantly be talking to your users. You have to be constantly talking to anybody that has a vested interest in your project, because this is what Jock basically was asking. This is what will kill your career, right? Because everybody thinks it's this, right? But here's the deal: the company doesn't care about this. The company doesn't care about this code. Right? Your client doesn't give a damn about this code. They don't care if you write it in JavaScript or C# or with a damn potato. If you give them a potato and it solves their problem, they'll pay you a lot of money. What they're paying for is that the problem is solved. And too many times in the real world technology, people get hyper focused on this horse crap. This is the least important thing that we do. This right here is what we do when we're done with the real work, essentially, right? Because if we do all this code and we haven't talked to our end user and we don't realize, it's like, you know, we're selling this to a company, we're selling this to a client, and we didn't do, you know, our documentation process or whatever properly, and all of their users have these crappy ass $50, smartphones because all they've needed is essentially a text service up until now, right? If you try to hand this over to them and charge them $100,000, and they're like, but it doesn't work for any of our users. Well, they should all be on iPhones. That's just not going to be a fun. That's not going to be a fun time for anybody. So that's why it's like you got to talk with people. You got to play around. Again, you got to futz around with this stuff. And that's the other thing too. Like a lot of new people that get into this field. Again, they just want to get into this field for the money, right? They think it's all money. Eli, I want a job where I make a lot of money and I get respect and people think I'm smart. Yeah. Go be a florist. Anyways, one of the big things is when you're working on these projects, your job as a professional is, again, to do things like test stuff that your client may not know how to test. So again, if you're creating these mobile web apps, so you decide, you're right, my focus is on mobile web apps, you need to have a selection of 10 phones at home. And you need to build weird ass projects and then see how each of the 10 phones functions. Again, not when you're getting paid, not when you're on the clock, just you're futzing around. You're like, that accelerometer, that's kind of interesting. Would that work on a $25 phone? I don't know, go grab one, see if it works. And then when your client asks you in the future, they're like, oh yeah, this is really cool. We want to deploy this. Be like, that's great. Is everybody on iPhone? Oh no, we're not on iPhone. Well, at least you're not all on $25 pieces of crap. Like, well, we are. Like, okay, well, here's the thing. Here's the cost for my project, and here's the cost to upgrade all your phones. Right? Again, as long as everybody knows what the hell's going on, you're fine. It's when you don't do planning, you don't communicate with people, that kind of stuff can go to hell. So anyways, off soapbox. Let's see here. So that is the accelerator. Then we have the Gamepad. So this is cool for things like robotics and that kind of thing. So if you follow me for any length of time, you know about the Silicon Derby program. So I had this idea for all these kind of like robot car races. So we use Raspberry Pi compute modules, and basically we build these things in order to be little robots and do different types of things. I don't know. The hardware might be good in 2 more years. Hardware isn't quite there. But one of the things, if you followed along, is I was actually able to control my robots at one point using a little gamepad controller. Again, one of the things you may not realize when you look at something like this, you may think this is very proprietary, right? If you look at the PlayStation controller or the Xbox controller, any of those controllers, like, oh, that's proprietary. I can't touch that. One of the interesting things is, though, is for a lot of these industries, they actually create standards you may not realize exist, and so there is a gamepad standard. So I could actually, again, when I have my little robot cars, I could connect my PlayStation 4 Bluetooth controller to my car and run it around using my PlayStation 4 controller, because there are standards that we can actually interact with to be able to do that. So this is a crappy little $20 Logitech controller. Again, obviously got a USB connection, but if I connected this with Bluetooth, it would work the same way, just a connection. And so this is the Gamepad one. And if we go take a look at this, we got this. Again, a lot of code. Gamepad input. ID status, connect a gamepad and press any button, and then we have a div for gamepad data. Basically, if you go through here, we're adding an event listener for gamepad connected. When there's an event, gamepad connected, we're doing status, gamepad ID, and basically if you go through all this, it essentially creates an array of whatever the hell I'm currently pressing, and that is all going to get printed out on the screen. So for some reason, again, Mac, iOS doesn't like this, Chrome does. So we go here, we can do Chrome. Okay, so gamepad input display, connect a gamepad and press any button. So I connected the gamepad and I press a button. Yay! It actually comes up, gamepad connected. It knows, it can actually determine what gamepad is connected to it, if that actually matters to you. And then here, it shows me the buttons that are being pressed, and then the axis, so axis 0, axis 1, 2, and 3. So you may not realize it, but there's actually 15 buttons on this thing. So I don't know, if I press Y, so if I press the Y button, button 3 pressed, value 1. Button 1 pressed. Right lower, button 7 pressed. So again, if you have a video game, or if you have, I don't know, if you have some kind of a web app where you want to be able to give the person some kind of control, you can actually do it with the gamepad. If we go here, we increase the size, so we got the axes down here. So that's for these two. So axis 0, so axis 0 is left or right on the left one. Axis 1 is Y, so this is X, Y. So X is horizontal, Y is vertical. So horizontal. And then the cool part is, like, if we do an angle, you'll notice that they're both changing. So again, that's where if you have like a little robot thing, you can have it like modify, whatever. And then you got the same thing for axis 2 and 3, and that's for this. So that's where, again, if you create your own little robot car that had enough brain power, this could be for controlling the bottom part, and then this one could be for controlling the turret. All right, and then you got all kinds of buttons here. And again, they're just, you know, as soon as I can turn something into a value, I can then trigger off of that value. Let's see here. Jack, what's up?
Number 3. So if that control, so if I had wrote that script, put it on a Android phone, access the Chrome app, and that's the Bluetooth controller. Basically, I can use that on the phone, that controller through Bluetooth, correct?
Should. I will say should. Yes. So it's the controller API. So any API, any controller you connect to a computer device when you have your web browser open, it should be able to read it properly. Now again, I do have to say with this particular script, it was a bit quirky on iOS for the Mac. So again, should. Yep. All right, let's see here. Anybody else have questions? Okay. Let's see here. Got that. Then we're getting to the end. We have speech recognition. We'll see how well this goes. And we have speech synthesizer, which is pretty easy. So again, one of the big things you need to be thinking about with creating apps nowadays is, again, how are your users going to be interacting with the computer, the devices, all that kind of stuff that you're creating? And are you creating something for 2024? Again, one of my biggest frustrations, again, I've been doing tech since 1996. Look, keyboards and mice are amazing. I remember the first time I saw a mouse. I remember somebody explaining a damn mouse to me. So I'm not anti-mouse. But it's amazing. We are in 2024. And so much of how we can use computers is how we did in 2004. And one of the things I want people to realize is we have all of this additional functionality that's built into our technology nowadays for different ways that we can be interacting with these systems. And so something to think about, again, when you're creating a web app or whatever else, is, hey, is there something a little more you can do with this web app than simply right click, left click, or type stuff into the keyboard? We'll get into that. Miffy. Okay, yep. What's up?
Thank you very much, Elon, for the opportunity and the privilege to join you.
Yep.
Can we put this in our profiles on this file? Can we put them as a portfolio?
Your portfolio? What, for like your resume?
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you want to put something like this on a GitHub, yeah, this might be one of those. There's no bad questions. There's maybe appropriate ones. So it might be better to talk about this after the class is over. But if you're looking for things to put in your resume, basically the big thing is you create projects, and oops, where the hell is my stuff? And you don't be me. Anyways, and then you put them onto GitHub. If you're gonna be a coder, basically this is your resume. So build wacky projects that do something and put it onto GitHub, and that can go, I don't know, into your resume or CV, but yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's one thing with questions. I know I'm sitting here begging for questions, but again, more than happy to answer any or almost any questions after class is over. But during class, keep it to the, let's try to keep it to the actual code or whatever, because this can end up being a disaster if everybody's talking. Right, if everybody has their own random questions. It was funny, I was doing the live classes. So back when I started doing the live classes about 2 years ago, in person. So I was doing them in a conference room, and I had somebody who asked a lot of questions during class, and holy shit, I had one of the other students lose their damn mind. Can you stop asking questions? We are here to learn the class. I'm like, oh God. Yeah, one of the things that you learn as a professional, there's the code, and then there's trying to figure out how to make everybody happy in a classroom. So anyways, again, more than happy to answer those kind of questions after class. So speech recognition and synthesizer. So if we go over and take a look at speech recognition, the cool part about this is actually happening on device. So we've dealt with speech recognition before. We're going to have a class in the future where we use like Python, and so we use voice APIs. We talk to our device. The device then sends all that information off to Google or wherever else, and then we get the response back. The cool part about this is actually happening in our web browser. And again, anybody that's been around for a little while, just realize we're now in that world. We are now in a world where basically voice recognition, is about as complicated as a frickin' H1 tag. I remember when, Dragon Naturally Speaking came out back in 2000. Anyways, but all this is for speech recognition is, again, some code here. Just the title for the page. On click, start listening. Transcript, your speech will appear here. Let's see, we're going to do the speech recognition here. If not speech recognition, your browser does not support this. And again, you basically go through recognition, new speech recognition function. You're going to say what the language is. This is going to say show words as spoken, so it looks more real time. Max alternatives 1. And basically we go through here, again, some code. If there's an error, start listening, and it puts out the transcript to where we're listening at. If we go and take a look at this, there we go. So, and we'll see how well this works. We'll see how well this works. Okay, so it's asking me to allow. Please don't make me look dumb in front of the class. Wait a minute. All right. Please don't make me look dumb in front of the class. I don't look too stupid. All right? So basically, again, this is just being done on the device. And so what it'll do is it'll listen to you until it hears a pause, what it thinks is a pause, and then it'll stop. Again, you now have this as ASCII text. As ASCII text, you can do with it whatever you want. If I click the Start Listening button again, I wonder if this will work 2 times in a row during a class. Look at that. That's built in the fucking web browser. Ah! Okay, this is what I get excited about. Everybody else is like, OpenAI. And I'm like, Speech Recognition API. Anyways, so that's what voice recognition can do. Again, the cool part about this is entirely on the browser. I don't know if this will work very well. Let's see, shake detection. That's the geolocation. Let's see if this will work on the phone. Again, it gets a little quirky sometimes. Done. Okay, voice recognition on the phone. Alright, so it says allow. It says allow. I wonder. No. Oh, I wonder if this will work on the phone. So there you go. I won't answer the phone. Okay, it might not be as good. Hold on, let's do it again. Start listening. I wonder if this will work on the phone. Yeah. Now in real time. I wonder if this will work on the phone. I wonder if this will work on the phone. Yeah, okay, so yeah, you get... this one's better, I guess. I don't know. Again, that's the kind of quirkiness and why you gotta troubleshoot and play around. And then the final one is then speech. So we have speech synthesizer. So again, especially think about this, visually disabled people. I think one of the interesting things, again, we talk about DEI. I don't know what the hell happened. Again, I'm not getting it. Look, there's an election. I'm not talking about the fucking election. Not talking about the election. One of the weird parts is, again, especially being me, like talking about DEI, just diversity, equity, and inclusion. And everybody, rah! One of the things that I look at, I'll be the one to admit it. Can I be the one to admit it? Like I talk to, like my parents' generation, right? My father is almost 80 years old. And they're talking about like being 70 is like the new 20, right? Oh, Eli, it's not like how it used to be, right? 60 is the new 20. I want to be clear. I will be the one person to admit it. I lose the fight with my bed far too often. I wake up from a night's sleep and am gimped up for a day because I twisted the wrong way, right? And why this comes up is like when we're building these systems, there's so much stuff about, handicapped people and these people and that people and that people. One of the things that I just want you to think about is you, my friend, are getting old too. Your eyes are going to go. Your hearing's going to go. And the other thing is we're not really having a lot of kids. And so you're probably going to be working longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. And so what seems really snarky and funny to say to 30-year-olds isn't quite as amusing to say to 80-year-olds. And what happens when you have 80-year-olds using your product? And they're actually office workers because they can't retire because Social Security went bankrupt. And so that's the thing, is like to be thinking about this kind of stuff like speech recognition and speech synthesizers and that kind of stuff. How can you simply just build these? And again, in 2024, how can we build these into our systems for usability just so our users can use it? Again, without all the hoopla. Just like, oh, hey, if this is a business class system and I have somebody that has bad eyesight, what functionality can I add to this thing just to make it easier? Don't worry about the ACA. Don't worry about the Equal Opportunity Commission. Just be like, hey, I'm a tech professional, being paid to design systems so that users can be the most efficient. Anyways, things to think about. So we got a speech synthesizer. And so this is cool. This is literally just simply allows your web browser to talk to you. If we go over, we take a look at that code. This is all it is. This is all it is. Not even that, because that actually doesn't work. Ignore that. Ignore that. This is literally, again, getting your program to speak is that code. Talk to you a second, Chris. JavaScript voice synthesizer, button on click, speak. It just says press me for the button. And the function is speak the message, so whatever the hell you want the message to be. So speech synthesis is utterance. So hello world, APIs are so easy to use. So again, this can simply be a variable value that's being sent from your back end or whatever. And then simply window, speech synthesis, and actually speak what the message is. We take a look at this. Oh, wherever I have my speech, not my camera, speech. Yeah, voice synthesizer. So JavaScript voice synthesizer and refresh.
Hello, world. APIs are so easy to use.
There you go. Look at that.
Hello, world. APIs are so easy to use.
See, and I can just go here. This is so cool. My boss will pay me for this. Oh no. Anyways, this is up on the server. This isn't connected to the server. Actually, can I do the Control S? Let's do a save. I bet you this will literally run locally. Let me pull this up. This is just sitting in my downloads. What did I say this was? Speech? So this is just local. So this is completely local. Doesn't have a server. We'll see if it works.
This is so cool. My boss will pay me for this. Hello, world. APIs are so easy to use.
There you go. So there you go. You literally have the computer being able to speak to you, built in the web browser. And again, as I just showed you, this file itself is literally just sitting in my downloads folder. So you don't even need a server, you don't need HTTPS or anything to work. Chris, what's the question? What's up, Chris?
Hey, so I'm wondering when we're interacting with these APIs, for example, like earlier with the camera, we were just getting the raw camera data feed coming over to the browser. Is there any way to interact with it? Because like if we wanted to zoom or if we wanted to enable the user to have that manual camera control from within the browser, or is this just like a raw data feed?
Okay, so this is, yeah, so you go back to the camera. So that's where you get to have fun. So when you start looking at this canvas thing, so start camera, right? So this is the drawing the image. This is the drawing image of the canvas. So the canvas is a dynamic environment for images. Basically, you read like when you do like animations, it would be in your canvas. Basically, the canvas is the area JavaScript writes to. So have fun. What you can do is you could take the picture that's coming in, and then you could code into it basically how you wanted that image to be modified for it to show up in that canvas. So if you said, if you wanted a user to be able to zoom in, you could have like a mouse click thing where it would click, it would find the coordinates, it would basically crop, and then it would take that, do some math, expand, and then dump that into the canvas.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of like local image processing, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So do we have more granular control over, like, because some phones have like an optical zoom built into the camera. Are we able to, is there like I mean, this is probably something I could Google to be honest, but so is there like an API where I can reach out and say, hey, camera app, start doing your optical zoom to go to 2x?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's going to be depending on the device. So when I had this working, again, I actually had this working in the iOS before it wasn't working. When this opened, you can get JavaScript to actually open essentially the camera app itself. So like when you go to upload a file on your iOS device, you click a button and then it gives you a thing to upload files. You can modify that. I figured if it's camera or whatever the thing is. So instead of opening up a file explorer, you actually open up the camera app. And so it'll open up the camera app, you've got the camera app, you've got whatever you want in the camera app. Once you hit the take a picture, it then grabs that and then sends it over to JavaScript. So again, if you want that more that kind of granular control, there's a different way to get
when you're
there.
calling the app instead of just getting the data feed. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, yep. Yeah, that's like with a lot of this stuff, that's where it's like, play. So yeah, anyways, so that is basically the class for HTML5 APIs. Again, there are a metric crap ton of these things. There are so many of them, and so again, you gotta go play with it. Again, ChatGPT is really good. I was surprised because again, doing these classes today, to be clear, I'm not great at JavaScript. I muddle through it. I get what it does. I can explain it to you, but actually coding is a different world. One of the things I really liked is, again, if you know what you want, you really can go to ChatGPT and you can ask it for code and it'll spit out actually some pretty decent code. So if you don't want to search through all this crap, one of the things you might do is you might just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I want JavaScript to do whatever it is you want it to do, and it might actually spit out something for you. So literally asking ChatGPT might be the best way to do some research on this. But just kind of play around with it. Again, with a lot of this, when we start talking about security, one, before you put this out into a production environment, you do make sure you audit it, by somebody who really knows JavaScript. Be careful about any kind of personal identifiable information, any kind of security, that kind of thing. But a lot of this stuff, like I say, you can just play with because it's working locally, that type of deal. Yeah, I don't know. That's about all I gotta say. Are there any questions then with the HTML5 APIs? Any additional questions? Wow, like everybody stuck through this class. I really thought there were gonna be 2 people by the end of it. All right. Any questions? Let's see here. API. noise. Gamepad one was definitely the coolest one. It's actually standard. Okay, you guys are just chatting away. No questions? No questions. Fair enough. Oh, we got John. John's like, somebody else asked a question. I get 5 more. What's up, John?
All right, number 4, this is probably my last one. So we, I'm working on now some of the labs we worked in the past.
Yep.
So one of them is the OpenAI app.
Okay. Yep.
So we just have, so if we want to try to combine some of the features of the HTML API with the JavaScript,
Yep.
so to take a picture, upload it to OpenAI to get a description and bring it back down.
Yep.
We just have to find a way to stack that together so that it kind of works in a sense, correct?
Yeah, because I didn't want to get into it today because, again, the code, it's really, again, trying to teach code is a pain in the butt, and so it just gets complicated. So yeah, so like what you would do, right, so you have your user, right, and you have your server, and then there's OpenAI, right? So basically what would happen is the user goes to your server. Your server then responds with this little JavaScript app, right? So basically take a picture, ask it a question, whatever else. They then take the picture, whatever. That then gets sent back to your bottle app or whatever you have running here. That then parses the data to figure out what's going on, make sure it's okay. Based off of what you set, then it will then go down to OpenAI with that whole, REST API call. OpenAI will then send a response back to your server, and then from there, your server will then send the web page or whatever back to your user. And again, this can get complicated because JavaScript can also interact with REST APIs. So one of the questions to ask is, do you want to send a full file, basically, more or less, do you want to send a full file to the user? And so the user has to wait while this happens, right? So they get the JavaScript app, they get the JavaScript thing, they give you information, it gets sent here, that takes time, that gets sent here, that takes time, the response comes back, that takes time, response goes to them. So it's going to be an amount of time to do that. And again, what is the user looking at? Is the user looking at a blank screen? Whatever else. One of the things you can do, another class, well into the future, is you could actually create your own REST API. So basically your server has a REST API, so theoretically you could send the data, and instead of the page looking for the user waiting for the full page to come back, possibly on the page, you can basically have something that auto updates as it's requesting from the REST API. So basically you have this page, my app, you have a submit button, and then down here is basically like a result area. And this result area could simply refresh whenever your REST API thing refreshes. And so again, that's where we get into architecture and design and 1,000 ways to skin a cat, as they say. So, I don't know if that makes a damn sense. But, Oops. Oh, you muted yourself, jock. Does that sort of make sense?
Sorta. I guess I'll have to stick around for that class. I didn't know we could make our own REST APIs.
Yeah. Basically, a REST API. So, I don't know what the hell. We've done classes on REST API, basically like with JSON. And so, yeah, you can. With all a REST API really is at the end of the day, is it's simply a web page that is specifically formatted for a computer to understand. So, CNN.com is formatted for you to understand. The RSS feed for CNN.com is formatted for a computer to understand. And so that's basically you can either put things into tags, right? Or you can, put them into the, indexes. So, yeah, you can create, yep. And that's one thing too. Anyway, there's more stuff on JavaScript because that's one. The cool part about JavaScript too is, so again, when we're doing static web pages, basically we make a request to the server sends the response back. And again, there's a lot of latency there that you have to worry about. The cool thing with JavaScript is JavaScript can do polling. Basically, what JavaScript can do is it can keep looking to see if some kind of asset has changed. And then if that asset has changed, it can then simply pull in that new change without refreshing the entire feed. So, yeah.
For the latency, could we use like in one of your other examples, like networking pinging to see the latency? Like in your example, the user has to wait to our website. We have to wait till we get a response from OpenAI, and then they have to wait for that. Is there any way we can kind of ping to figure out the latency for that?
No, because that's network latency. So ping network latency is your computer to the other computer. How long does that take? It's just it's called an ICMP request. So I ping, that computer responds. How many milliseconds is that? When we talk about this latency, part of the latency is the time from your system to the server, but more of the latency is your server processing, your server making the request, OpenAI processing, then that being sent back to your server and processing, and then that being sent back. So this isn't simply an ICMP type latency. This is how long this entire damn process takes before the response goes back to the user.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess this is my last question. Because we're using JavaScript as an example, and it's kind of older. Is there anything newer in JavaScript that we can probably use, or that's pretty much this is probably going to be it?
Yes. Well, so if you're doing web apps, you'll be using JavaScript. That is where, again, if you want better performance, that's where we're talking about native apps. So for iOS, you'll be using Swift, and with Android, what's it, Java? I've never done Android actually, and so that's where you could get better performance, because then, like with Swift is the programming language that Apple has specifically designed for iOS devices. So the performance is always going to be better. The issue you have though is if you build a Swift app, it only runs on Apple. And so that's like one of the big problems with startups is that, again, like one of the big things, if you start a startup, your biggest issue is money. Your biggest issue is going to be money. And so if you still don't really understand how users are going to use your app, if you still don't really understand your value proposition, if you have one dev team creating an iOS app and another dev team creating a web app and another dev team creating an Android app, you've just tripled your development cost before you even know if anybody gives a damn about your product. And so one of the things with this, I tell most startups to start with the frickin' web app, because this is the easiest thing to develop, the cheapest thing to develop. You can get your users playing with it, and then they can tell you what they actually care about. Because again, that's going to be the big thing, like your user base. Is it going to be mostly iOS? Is it going to be mostly Android? I knew developers back in the day, it was an interesting conversation where they said they could get more traction on Android, but nobody paid anything, right? People who pay $50 for a phone are not going to pay $10 a month for an app. People who pay $1,100 for a phone will pay $10 a month for an app. So they became iOS developers because basically the idea was they were getting money from the users, and so it didn't matter how popular they were if they weren't getting any money. So they went for iOS. Where there are other developers, again, they were in the more industrial environment, again, going to companies where the company just has to buy 1,000 phones. They don't care what phones they are, right? And so they were all using Android. And again, where did the money come from? The money came from the corporation that was just paying that corporate fee. It wasn't coming from the individual users. And so, yeah, you can get much better performance, bar none, much better performance, much better usability out of native apps. But that's his own world, and we may or may not ever get into those. So
Thank you.
Yep. David. What's up, David?
Hey, so I also have a Python question.
Yep.
I was following your videos on YouTube for the Python bottle.
Yep.
And I build a lot of apps with Laravel using MVC and like object-oriented programming.
Yep.
Bottle, it seems more like a mini framework. Do you have any videos on any OOP frameworks for Python in there? Because I was like going through it. Couldn't tell from the titles.
OOP. I don't know. Is Python object? I get again back 20 years ago. I understood all this stuff much better. Like now it's because there's object and there's functional and there's whatever the hell you call it.
But
So,
my idea is to like take the apps I wrote in Laravel and then just, if it's following MVC, I could just do the same Python and help me better grasp it, right? By building something useful,
yes.
Where I already have.
So if you really want the MVC model, so have you heard of the framework Django? DJA.
Yeah, I heard of it.
Yeah, so that's really MVC. Like the reason that I teach people Bottle is it is a micro framework, so we can just focus very specifically on, we're not doing URL redirection and all that kind of crap. So
Gotcha.
so yeah, so like if you're in that MVC world, I haven't played a lot with Laravel. You might find Django is more the route you want to go down.
Awesome. I'll check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's gonna be the thing too. Like I say, with all these products that I show you, again, my bias, just for anybody that's new here, my bias is simply trying to show you these concepts, because my feeling is, having been in the field so long, if I can get you to build anything, you'll stay interested and excited, right? If I can take you from nothing to something, you're gonna feel like you're doing something. And then you're like, ooh, but how can I make this faster? How can I make this more secure? How can I make this X, Y, or Z, right? I want to get you from nothing to building something, and then you then start to learn how to optimize whatever. Again, a lot of instructors out there, they're more, how you really should teach people, and so they teach people this really hyper complicated crap. Most of the students can't keep up. And most of the students give up. Again, remember, if you're going to be in the technology world, you're not going to fail. You're not going to fail. Like if you're running a race, I'm about to do a half marathon. Sunday I do a half marathon, right? If I'm running a half marathon and I break my leg, I have failed. I failed. Just done. Can't do it. I am not a Navy SEAL, right? That is fail. On the other hand, if I'm running and I'm like, oh, I got a little cramp. Oh, it's a little warm today. I'm concerned about whatever else. And then I stop. That's not failing. That's giving up. And what I see with most people can do technology. Most people can do technology. They don't fail. They don't stroke out. They don't have a heart attack. Right? They aren't halfway through a boot camp and they get evicted because biblical flood happens. Right? That's failure. What happens is they go through here, and then things get so complicated, and security and this and that and the other, and then they get frustrated, and then they're like, I can't do this, and then they stop. And I think that's the most dangerous thing in education. So just so everybody there knows the bias, that's why we use Bottle, that's why we use SQLite. Like, I'm trying to use real technologies, but like the simplest one possible to get you going as fast as possible. So anyways, that's just my bias, so you know it. Oh, Chris, what's up?
Hey, so I kind of already get the vibe of what this answer will be. But I'm wondering, so I'm 30 years old, I'm going back to school for IT and networking and all that kind of stuff right now. And we're doing a little bit of programming, gotten a handle on JavaScript. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the integration of AI into like education and how ChatGPT can be a useful tool versus when can it be abused, and when, like, because I struggle during my project sometimes. I'm building a little side project with Steam and pulling game data and all that kind of stuff. Not great at CSS, so usually that's what I'm going to ChatGPT for.
Yeah.
At what point do you think that's like a bad idea to do versus like when you're using it as a crutch versus when you're using it as like a learning tool? What differentiates the behavior? Kind of just like your general thoughts on this kind of stuff.
Using AI for education. Copy paste. God gave us copy paste for a reason. One of the things to remember in the technology world is don't reinvent the wheel. Again, that's one of the biggest problems with new people. They all want to reinvent the wheel. Why? Again, that's why GitHub exists. Copy somebody else's work. So what you really need to be doing is it's more important that you understand what's going on and can audit. Like, again, like I didn't write this crap. Again, I went to frickin' OpenAI and just said, please give me. Now I know enough to be able to go through and understand what's going on here. So if something needed to be modified or something became stupid, I could try to tweak that, right? I could try to fix that. And so basically that's going to be like one of the big things you need to think about like with your career is, yeah, like what's your job? What are you getting paid for? What are you trying to accomplish? And basically using OpenAI in order to solve those problems. The big thing, whether you use OpenAI or copy paste, really all OpenAI is at the end of the day, this is just a more complicated version of Stack Overflow. And so like the biggest problem is people like copy and paste out of Stack Overflow, but if they don't understand what they're copying and pasting, that's what turns into a disaster, right? And so basically that's what I'd say is like, understand the basic concepts of what you're doing. Like, okay, so I'm creating an HTML button here. Okay, I get that. So on click, so okay, this is creating an action for JavaScript. And then this is going to be firing off this particular function. Okay. And then I can come down here and I can start looking at like, okay, what is this particular function? So it's got media devices. Okay, that's video true, media stream. I'm getting that stream, on load, disable. Like you should be able to go through and understand what's happening. Yeah. I would say that's going to be the big thing. Because yeah, more and more, I mean, more stuff is going to be using AI, and it's going to be a force multiplier. Like again, it's interesting having done this for 30 years. Like that's one of the reasons I lose my mind with everybody losing their mind over AI. I swear to God, these people have only been in the field for like 2 years. Because like think about this. Like, so when I got my MCSE, I got my MCSE in 2000. And so I had a buddy of mine that had a TechNet subscription. To understand what technology used to be like, he had a TechNet subscription. So $450 a year. He paid for TechNet. And one of the things he got was all the licenses for all the operating systems that Microsoft created. So basically he had all the licenses to run a company with up to 15 users. That was part of it. The other part of it was their knowledge base and white papers. And what I want you to grasp, and this is why I laugh about AI in the modern world, it came in CDs. I shit you not. He had 3 like 4-inch binders of CDs. And what you had to do back then is you literally you took an index CD, you installed the index onto your computer. And then when you had a question about what Microsoft was doing, you would type the question in, hopefully it knew what the hell you were talking about. It then would literally say, find CD 304 and pop it in, and you get white papers and all that other garbage. So am I less of a professional in 2024 because I use Google? No, right? So that's the thing. Like where you have to understand why you're doing what you're doing, and then honestly also be confident about it. Like when you walk into the room and the boss is like, "Why are we doing a web app over iOS?" Be like, "Look, we could do a native iOS app, but we don't understand, the requirements of our users yet. We're able to get this web app up and running within a week without going through Apple's whatever process. So that's why we went with web app." And then the CEO will go, "Meh, okay." Or again, if you walk in, like, "Oh, why do we do a web app?" "Well, I don't know. I was watching this Eli the computer guy. I don't know. Eli the computer guy said we should do web apps, so I figured maybe we should do web apps. So I don't know. Maybe should we do an iOS app?" And the CEO is going to fire your ass. Again, a lot of it's confidence. I think about that like when I first learned about consulting. So I got fired from, I didn't get fired. I quit to go off to travel through Europe, and we had the dot-com bust. Everything went to hell. So anyways, I was trying to figure out how to pay the bills. Ran into this guy, and again, I talked about him a lot, Adolfo. And he was a telephone system consultant. So basically all he did was telephone systems. And so one of the most interesting things, right? So I go with him to a client site survey, and the client is telling him the problems that he's having. And again, I had 100 hours of telephone systems training, so I knew telephone systems too. So anyways, so we go in there, and basically the CEO was saying, yeah, we're having these problems with extensions. So basically extensions is, the routing for the calls. And so Adolfo looks at him very seriously. "Oh, okay." And there's these things called the 66 blocks. So there's these little blocks, basically how the wires get connected in the system. So he's like, "Huh." So he licks his finger, and then he runs it down that 66 block. And "Oh, Yeah, I get what's going on. Don't worry, we'll get it fixed. And then he walks away. So I'm walking after Adolfo. And again, he was much higher level than me, but I did still know what's going on. I'm like, hey, Adolfo, yeah. He was like, yeah. What did you do? It's like, so you licked your finger in the 66 block. Like, I don't understand what that did. Like, truly, like what? And he's like, oh, that didn't do anything. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I don't have a damn clue what the hell's going on with the system. But he looked at me. He said, but I will fix it. Right? I'm a professional. I know I can fix it, so I will fix it. So you're just making the CEO happy for a bit by licking your finger and doing that. And what you're going to find in our field, most of us do that, and then we figure out how to solve the problems. So, with using OpenAI, with using any of these AI things, just think about it as an incredibly inexpensive consultant. Think about it, you're going to Fiverr. You're going to Fiverr to get an answer. And then think about if you went to Fiverr for an answer, you take the answer, but what would you do to make sure it wasn't a disaster? I don't know. Does any of that make sense? Oh, and for anybody who asks a question, do not remute yourself until you're done, because I have to ask you to unmute again. Anyways, Chris, does any of that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something I've been trying to focus on, is not just copy pasting the output of ChatGPT, but really kind of like analyzing it, figuring out what does what. If something breaks, it's a lot easier to go back and kind of analyze it and say, oh, well, it's calling the wrong function, or that's the wrong thing, or something like that. But definitely appreciate the answer.
Cool. Oh, good deal. So, that's gotta be the big thing. Like, and that's where it's just a force multiplier. Again, it's like I hear this crap, like, again, from the old school IT people that are now no longer IT people because they got fired. But like when the cloud came along, like how many old school IT people are like, I would never use the cloud. And again, it's like, is using Office 365 cheating? If you've got a production environment and you can throw 200 users onto Office 365, pay $10 a month, and basically you're done. Hand all the work over to the secretary. Right? Is that any less of a real technology professional than running your own Exchange servers? Because again, like with Exchange servers, those are email servers. I had a buddy of mine who went through the tests, and she already had her MCSE, and she said the Exchange server tests were literally the hardest tests she had ever taken in her entire life. And now you can pay $10 a month and just do Office 365. Again, what you need to be thinking of, we are solving problems for our clients or our bosses. And so we just need to know that what we're implementing is going to be stable, it's going to be secure, it's going to solve the user's problems in a reasonable fashion. It's going to, we can actually afford it. You don't build systems that the company can't afford. It's that kind of stuff. It's not, Anywho. So, any more questions? It's so sad. It's like Friday night. I want to be like, yeah, it's Friday night. I'm going to go have some beer. And it's like, no, I'm not, because I'm doing a half marathon on Sunday. It's hard enough doing a half marathon. Anyways, questions. Nope, no questions. Okay, good deal. So we did, so I put up for Wednesday, next Wednesday, I guess, we're going to do an introduction to hacking class, where we'll be talking about hacking in the way that I do. So you'll learn about hacking. It is not nearly as exciting as Hollywood makes it seem, but we will talk about hacking and things you need to be thinking about, especially as you start building these types of systems, thinking about injection attacks and all that kind of stuff. We'll have another technical class on Friday. I think we're going to do Introduction to Linux. We haven't done Linux yet, so probably Friday we'll do an Introduction to Linux class. And then, like I say, not this Tuesday, but a week and a half Tuesday here in Asheville. If you're in the Asheville area, we're going to start the in-person series, and so we're going to start that with Introduction to Python. Basically, we'll have people come in, and one of the big things there is they bring their own computers so that we can actually make sure their computers are doing the work. So when I did Silicon Dojo before, for my own sanity, I actually purchased lab computers, and so everybody would come in and use the lab computer. The problem was then is that they're using lab computers, and then they go home to their own computer, and then they don't know what to do. And so now, basically, it's going to be a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. But if I can get everybody's computers, their computers can run Python properly and do everything, then it's easier for them to continue doing homework and stuff once they leave. So that will be next. Yeah, anyways, a week and a half from now. So if you're in the Asheville area or want to come to the Asheville area, join the Asheville meetup group. Emefe, what's up, Emefe? Efi?
Eli, thank you very much. Is the JavaScript class, is it on YouTube now?
Is this class on YouTube?
The JavaScript class.
Oh, yeah, the Java, it is. Oh, if I can find my own damn web browser. What am I doing? What am I doing? Not that one. Not that one. So JavaScript. It is Introduction to Cloud Computing. Yeah, JavaScript. Right there. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. So with that, you're done. You're done. Everybody's done. Cool. See y'all later.